One more go. So it turns out you can totally survive isolation if you have a ZX Spectrum. And for those who don't know, this was a computer introduced in 1982. And I'm lucky to have the Divmmc Future adapter, which adds SD card capability, so you can put all your favourite games on the SD card. So if you press the bottom button, it will reset the Spectrum into its normal use, or if you press the top button, it then loads up and we can browse the card. So if we want a bit of Chucky Egg, and it instantly loads. It's amazing. And by 1985, two musicians, Alan Pateman and Peter Henning.
In 1984, drum machines cost a lot of money, so the market was there for a cheap one. Alan and Peter stumbled across this crucial gap in the market.
We were both struggling musicians, nearly starving musicians, and we'd both been on the dole for about 5 years, and we'd been living in the same house, and we're both keyboard players. What we both lacked was a drum machine, or any drummers to play with, basically. And so we sat down and designed ourselves a drum machine.
Why didn't you just go out and buy one?
We couldn't afford it, simple as that.
Made this add-on for the ZX Spectrum. They called it the Specdrum, and basically what it was is a DAC, and they wrote software which would turn your ZX Spectrum into a drum machine. And I was in my pre-teens when I had this, and a DMX at that time would have been totally unobtainium for a school child. So I think this was £30 when it came out. It was totally mind-blowing. On the back of the Spectrum we have the 9-volt DC input, we have the mic and ear ports, and you would imagine that the ear would be the output and the mic would be the input, but in actual fact you connect the ear to the earphone of the tape recorder, so in actual fact that's the input, and the same with this is actually an output. And we also have the UHF output, which you would tune your TV into. I've converted this into a composite out. Oh, I should just say this was a Spectrum that I bought broken. It was like £5 or something like that, and it had a RAM issue which I managed to repair using the RAM board from joules per coulomb.
Hello and good time of day to you.
I'll link his channel below, and I haven't really heard much of him. I hope he's okay. And also I replaced this top piece of metal and the buttons and the membranes to make the keyboard perfectly in good working order.
I've maintained it for 20 years. This old broom has had 17 new heads and 14 new handles in its time.
And looking nice because it was a bit tatty, the one that I had. Again, I'll link down below. So on the back of the unit, this is the SD card reader. This pulls out like that, and there we can see the edge connector where you would attach peripherals. And the Specdrum itself plugs into that edge connector, and it's quite a long cable now. Originally that ended up as a phono cable, and what I've done is just make another cable which is a female phono to bantam to plug into my patch bay, and the Specdrum plugs into the back like so. Now unfortunately I do not have a parallel connector, so it's impossible for me to plug both the Divmmc and the Specdrum in at the same time, so I can't load the software from the SD card. And just for completion, what we'll do is we'll just test how much current everything uses with the Specdrum on its own. So if we just plug the 9 volts in, and we can see about 379 milliamps. Seems to be just settling down a little bit, 378. And the Divmmc, that's now drawing 456 milliamps. And the ZX Specdrum of 410 milliamps.
Well, first of all, we spent 3 months designing the basic machine, which allowed us to record and play back, and then we spent 6 months designing the program which allows people to use it, and then 3 months finding somebody interested enough to make it.
We spent a lot of time even getting anybody to listen to it, partly because it was written for the Specdrum, which wasn't then considered to be a musical computer.
The Specdrum program itself is loaded off a cassette. This is the one that comes with the unit, and on side 1 is the system and the basic kit, and on side 2 is demo songs, a set of 11. There's an extra rim shot and a high tom, and the rim shot can be loaded into voice 5 or 6, and the high tom can be loaded into 2, 3 or 4. I also have the Electro Kit, and oh, this brings back memories, reading the instructions. Normally they did have a gatefold sleeve like this. And I also have the Latin kit. Timbales, another hand cowbell, capacitor tambourines. Anyway, we'll check them out. Oh, and also on these 2 cassettes, on the B side, is the kit editor. And that allowed you to take sounds from any of these kits and combine them to make your own kit that you can load into the software. So I have already transferred these cassettes onto the computer. I've got them recorded into Pro Tools. So to load these programs, I shall just play the Pro Tools session into the computer. I'll put a stopwatch here so we can see how long this takes. Okay, so we type in J for load, enter, let's start. So 4 minutes, that's not too bad. This video's got quite long already, so I think I'm going to split it up. So join me on the next video where we look at how to actually program this thing.